In the last episode, we raced a monohull to the Exumas, we dropped in on some endangered iguanas, and we investigate Bahamian aphrodisiacs. Do they really work? In this episode, our captain gets injured. We go aground and then we sail to Norman Cay. And we help someone whose emotions are well and truly on the rocks.
So, well fed and watered, we went to bed on a peaceful looking evening. The wind soon picked up to 20 to 25 knots. I went out to fix the flapping ropes, and the following was the result.
So tell me what happened. What were you doing?
So, what was I doing? I was fixing up clanking ropes at night with a torch in my hand, obviously, and as I was walking back, I'd done the job, or I'd finished what I was going to do. As I was walking back along the deck, my foot went through an open hatch, boom, straight down, caught the front edge of my shin on the edge of the hatch, and tore a bit of skin off.
So he's just put that flapper skin down in place. Leave it down, leave it down.
I'll just show you.
No, don't show, don't show.
I'll show you. It's just...
Oh.
So... It's just a skin wound. Gee, it hurts. And actually, by the time I got inside, it had risen up like an egg.
I know, it was huge like an egg.
About the size of an egg in size, but probably about that sort of high. Anyway, it was fairly significant. So I've just been applying direct compression with with ice and with flannels. And so now we're just going to dress it.
So we've got steri strips and crepey bandage ready to go. So we're going to steri strip down the flappy skin. Don't try this at home, kids.
So obviously it's ideal to clean the wound with a disinfectant like chlorhexidine. If you've got a flap of skin like this, always try and preserve it and get it back into place, because it'll heal much faster if you keep the skin in place. Like a lot of people are tempted just to cut off the big flap of skin, but if you can lay it in place...
kind of like a skin graft, right?
Like a skin graft, exactly. So it will heal a lot better if you can hold it in place and get it to survive. And if it doesn't survive, it acts as a dressing anyway. So I'm just wanting to hold it in place with some steri strips. I suppose.
Probably be easier.
That's okay. And of course what you want to do is to get the wound, the blood to dry, so it forms its own natural barrier for disinfection as well. So now I'm just going to cover it with a simple non-stick melanin, sunny side to the wound, and then it looks like new again, doesn't it?
Mm-hmm.
This is to apply compression, and if you didn't have enough compression just with that alone, you could add a bit of extra padding here, but I think I'm going to get enough compression because that's going to reduce the bruising tight enough that you can tolerate and your foot won't go blue.
And you don't want me one in the morning saying any wisecracks like, would you like some bacon with those eggs? That egg. No one would do that to you, honey.
So doesn't that look good?
You won't be swimming tomorrow.
Well,
okay.
Watch where you're standing in the middle of the night on a deck. It's not all solid decks. We'll see you tomorrow. Here we were, anchored ideally between two islands, exactly where the anchor sign is on the map. and seemingly completely protected from the sea. What we completely underestimated was the power of the tide as it flowed out off the banks through these narrow cuts and out into the deeper water. The strength of the current pushed us completely against the wind despite it blowing 20 to 25 knots, resulting in us nudging the sandbank ahead of us, and so we had to move anchor and shift south into deeper water, clear of this sandbank. It always feels so much worse doing things in the middle of the night. But our anchor reset wonderfully, and the rest of the night was peaceful. That activity did make my leg throb even more. The next morning we woke to that same 20-knot wind and made the decision to sail along the banks, which would give us protection from the easterly wind creating much worse weather offshore. As you can see, it's a bit of a grey day, quite a lot of clouds, but a nice beam reach for sailing down the 13 miles or so to Norman Cay. We had to take a bit of a circuitous route in order to avoid the shoals and rocky areas. And after that night of fairly disturbed sleep because of the strong currents in the cuts, we made the decision that it would be much easier to anchor in the lee of the islands rather than in the protection between the islands where all the vicious tidal flows occurred. As we approach Norman Cay, the charts tell us that there is not enough water for us to anchor in the lee of the island here, but we see a monohull up ahead of us, and clearly he is anchored very nicely and in good protection just behind the island. We proceeded very cautiously across these banks with spotters on both sides of the hulls and me watching the depth sounder like a hawk. I also made the point of motoring quite slowly whenever there was less than a meter below my keel, and then we found a nice trench to anchor in completely flat water and giving us an extremely nice night's sleep.
We're just about ready to pull into Norman Cay. We just got to take it nice and slow. Captain John on the helm.
Over the rocky area, now it's all sandy.
Are we unlocked?
We dinghied ashore hoping to check out the restaurant that had the reputation of having the best burgers in all of the Bahamas, but it was closed. It was a lovely long beach with beautiful white sand and clear water, and we relaxed for a while. And then we dinghied around through to the channel where there was a wreck of a plane from the drug smuggling days. So it was 24 hours ago that I wounded my leg falling down the hatch, and so I've had the dressing on it that I think you saw me putting on. I did have to loosen it through the night, so because it was getting a bit too painful and a little bit kind of swollen. So I released the pressure in the middle of the night just to make it comfortable, and then I must say I did have a better night's sleep. Been out for a walk today and I got burrs in the bandage.
Can't take it anywhere.
It's been less painful than I expected, I must confess, which is a good thing. But today we'll see what it actually looks like. Now if it doesn't come off easily, I'm going to have to soak it.
You're going to have to soak it, huh?
Hey,
It's a soak job.
I need to soak it. So we're just soaking the dressing with water, clean water, just to soften the scab and the adhesion. I don't want the skin to pull away.
More softening.
And probably one of the things at this point is just to be patient. Some kind of tapes are dissolve better with certain types of things, but because this isn't glue, this is just a non-stick dressing, and it's really just my scab.
It's just your scab
That's sticking, and I'm feeling the hairs pulling as well, which is a...
Yeah, I wondered about that, actually.
So you see how where there's no scab, it actually comes off quite easily. And I kept it completely dry.
You might need more water.
And more time.
Just more water and more time.
There we go. kind of
So
there.
you can see that black patch is the strip that came off, and he just cleaned it, laid it back down, and then put some wisteria strips over the top there.
So actually, no, what I'm going to do now is I'm going to just dry it, clean it a little bit, dry it, and put another dry dressing on, because now that the bleeding stopped, the next dressing won't stick on so much, and it should be easier tomorrow. But this just come in close again. You can see the skin is actually sitting there quite nicely. It's a little bit dusky, but hopefully over the next few days it'll start to get blood flow from the tissues underneath, and hopefully it'll survive. But I was a little bit worried. Oh, that's really sore. Sure. I was actually a bit worried about infection, but I think it's just bruising. It's really tender all the way up to here, but because there's not a lot of redness, I think it's just the swelling from. Compare my leg sizes. I normally have a nice slender
Shin, yeah, you can see.
This is just kind of fat. Okay, so now I've cleaned the wound and I'm ready to dress it. I'll just show you what it looks like. I've deliberately left all the scab there. I've tried to not make it very wet, and this time I'm actually going to be putting a little bit of Bactroban on it. This is an antibiotic ointment, partly to reduce the chance of infection, but also actually just make sure it doesn't stick when I pull the dressing off tomorrow. There should be a lot less sticking anyway, but that'll just help that a little bit. So here we go. Now obviously normally if this was in a medical environment we'd be using gloves and probably a wooden spatula, but I don't have the wooden spatula, and it's my own wound, so I don't need to worry about infection. If you notice, but on this side of this wound up at the top there's a little bit of a gap, which is a little bit of a shame. The skin's just not quite filling that in, but at least that'll be an easy small wound to heal if the rest of the skin actually takes. Now Cutolin, same as before, shiny side to the wound, and a dressing. Now you've got the goo on it. It'll actually sit there quite nicely by itself. I'm not having to put the dressing on as tight today because I'm not worried about the swelling. Yeah, the good thing about these compared to tape is you can reuse them. Done, and we'll see it again tomorrow.
Alright, so you know what? I'd really like to talk about the person we bumped into the other day.
Yeah.
So the story with this person is that we were in the right place at the right time, I guess, and she completely dumped on us the fact that no one knows how much she does for everybody else. This person runs around, looks after everybody else.
She's being the mother.
She's mothering, and she's mothering everyone, and she was feeling very deflated, and life wasn't really great for her because she didn't feel appreciated. She didn't feel like anybody cared about her. She was at a very low ebb, and she just kind of like, and again we sort of stretched out our hand and said, well, if you want to talk about it, we're quite happy to see if we can help in any way, which we did. And there's a lot of people out there that I know can relate to this situation.
Absolutely.
You get yourself into a situation where you think to be the best person or to be a nice person, you have to self-sacrifice all the time, which is totally, it's not correct. Because when you're self-sacrificing, a couple of things happen. First off is you burn yourself out. You completely burn out, and then you'll be no use to anybody else. And the other thing is you don't establish your self-worth or where your boundaries are. So if you don't know where your boundaries are, and what I mean by boundaries is what you're prepared to do or what you're prepared to sacrifice for the sake of other people. If you haven't established those boundaries for yourself, nobody else knows where those boundaries are. And the thing that happens is with this total, complete burnout of giving and giving and giving, a byproduct of that is resentment. So the givers that are really nice people that spend all their life giving and helping other people start to become resentful of all that they've given everybody, and wait a minute, nobody cares about me, no one's giving back to me. So people start to become resentful. Now, you need to establish your own boundary. Yeah, how far are you prepared to go for other people? And when it doesn't start feeling good and you start feeling that, now wait a minute, and I don't want to say no, there are other ways of saying no besides N-O. But you need to tell them that that you actually have a life, that it's encroaching into things that you want to do, or that doesn't really suit you to do that right now. And that's exactly what you can say. You know, you can say no in a very kind way. If you don't want to do something, just say, you know what, that's really not going to suit me today or right now. But you know I'd do it for you, but right now or today, that's really not going to work out for me. So, you know, you haven't said no. The word no, which people sometimes, the givers, really struggle with. But you use other phrases that take the place of saying no, but are a little bit kinder, like, oh, actually, I'm not able to do that.
I'd love to do it, but unfortunately,
right now, at the moment, I'm not able to do that. Not able to do that is a really great phrase, because what you'll find is people don't say, oh, but why? They'll just go, oh, okay. And you know what they'll do? They'll go and ask somebody else to do it, and someone else will say yes.
Or they'll do it themselves. And I think if you're feeling unhappiness or resentment, I mean, you use the word resentment, but if you're feeling unhappiness as a result of stuff that you're doing for people, you really need to take serious note of what you're doing and what's making you unhappy. Because if it's making you unhappy, there's got to be another way. You have to look for other solutions, other things to do to make it better.
So the reason we're talking about this is because this is exactly what we told this lovely lady, where she was feeling nobody cared about what she wanted, no one considered her at all or anything like that, because simply she didn't consider herself. She hadn't established those boundaries, and she hadn't learnt how to say no in a nice way. So that's the reason we're sharing that, is because we know with all these situations and all these different people that we end up helping, that somewhere down the camera there's someone that can really relate to that situation and go, oh, you know what, I'm like that, or that's happened to me, or that's happened to my mum or my neighbor or whatever. And maybe through the things that we share, you can then share some of these tools and help these people yourselves. And you know, just realize that if you don't establish those boundaries and you don't look after you, then who's going to?
All relationships have to be fair and balanced. If you give, there should be some taking back. If you're a wonderful person, which obviously you are, if you're that much of a giver, this is all about you guys out there who are the givers, and where you're not getting anything back in return. So hopefully that's given you some great tools to go forward in the future. See you later, guys.
If you have liked this episode, hit the like button, subscribe for free, and ding the dong so you don't miss your fix of the next exciting episode. Love and health from the Barefoot Doctors.